Today on Tech Talk, we're going to complete this Mitsubishi machine. We're going to clean the mode encoder switch here, and we're going to lubricate the bottom side of this chassis. This chassis also features this wonderful black grease crap that causes so many headaches on this type of machine. Another common problem on these is these belts have a tendency to go bad. Some of these units, this one's got an improved capstan motor. Some of these units that featured a plastic pulley, and the plastic pulley, a nylon pulley, would crack. It was basically a nylon hub that fit over a brass shaft. And what the fix to it was you bought a new pulley and you basically put some epoxy around it and glued a new metal shaft over top of the existing hub that was there. The new brass piece had a larger hole in the middle than this one, and it went around the existing brass hub on the motor. That was the fix from Mitsubishi. Of course, the easy way to fix these things was just to take the original plastic pulley, put some crazy glue around the shaft, and glue the thing back in place. It would work forever. Never broke down again. But anyway, we're going to clean the mode switch on this unit, and we're going to lubricate the chassis. That'll take care of the bottom side of the guts on this one. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to plug in my soldering iron so that I can remove the switch. We'll clean the mode switch, we'll lubricate the chassis, and then this machine is mechanically, this machine will be good for many more years of use. Although I think we'll probably have some fun with it and create some symptoms on this one at some point going forward. Maybe we'll create a problem with the frequency generator over here, so that you can see what happens if you lose your FG6 or your frequency generator on your capstan motor. We might even be able to do the same thing. This one here has a frequency generator on the drum, so we can lose that, maybe lose that signal too. But we'll cover that when we get there, or maybe do some other stuff. I have a few tricks up my sleeve I can do on this one, as well as some of my other machines. But this one here, for this video, we're just going to do the general maintenance of the mechanism. Now, how this one here works, your power is transmitted through a series of gears to raise and lower the front loading mechanism. There are some other gears underneath here, which we're not gonna get to the cam gear because they generally don't cause that much of a problem on these. The big issue on this is the mode encoder switch and the little levers on the slide plate get gummed up. So that's what we're going to cover on this video. So I'm just waiting for my soldering iron to heat up, and then we can do the mode switch. When working on a unit like this with a soldering iron, you have to be very careful to not touch this edge with your soldering iron, or you will ruin the motor. And also keep magnets away from here. This brown coating you see here is actually magnetic. It has magnetic pulses encoded on it, which is picked up by this little Hall effect device. That is what determines the speed of the motor. If you touch this with a soldering iron, the heat from the soldering iron will degauss the magnetic field. The same goes for if you're using solder wick. Be sure you keep the hot side of the solder wick well away from the motor stator there, because or the rotor, I should say, because it will ruin that motor. So basically, we're just going to apply some heat onto some solder wick here to take the solder off of the pins. and then these switches just lift off the board. They're held in place by just a couple little clips on either side here, and soldered down to the board. Very easy to get at. Very easy to fix this problem. So once you've lifted up your switch, the little clip slightly, then just apply a little bit of heat and the pins will pop right off as you heat them up. You usually have to go over them a few times just to reheat them one at a time, and they will lift up. Just like that. Now, there's no fear, now that the camera's sufficiently out of focus so that you can't see what I'm doing, there's no fear that you're not going to get your timing of the switch correct. It's impossible to incorrectly time this switch because, as you notice, there's a little pin sticking up, and that little pin is going to mesh with that slot on your switch. So when you put your switch back in, it can only go in one place. There actually is an alignment mark. That alignment mark is right here on the edge, you see, right there. That's your home position. So once you've got your home position, when you drop this back in place, it will line up with that little pin, providing that you're in the eject position when you start out. So we'll zoom our camera back, and we're just going to push down. We just have to compress these little tabs here slightly so that we can open up the switch. Just press them down with your fingernail and the switch will pop apart. Now that is a grimy, gungy switch. You see? See how brown that is? Those should be nice shiny contact, but you see the dirt on that? That's what we got to clean. So we just dig our good old standard Q-tips. Still got a couple of them here that are relatively clean. And we'll just wipe out the switch. As you can see what we've just cleaned out of there. We'll do the same thing for these contacts. We'll just wipe them down. As usual, I do like to put a little bit of tension, so I'm just going to lift my finger under there slightly. Don't bend them up too much. Just a little bit more tension on them, just to make sure that we've got a good connection. And then we can give our shot of contact cleaner again. I'm just going to use good old Neutral. So we'll just give a little shot of Neutral cleaner onto the contacts. That'll protect the contacts, and we'll polish them up one side. Love the smell of Neutral. It smells like diesel. As I've said before, in many cases I think that's probably what they've got in there as its lubricant, is they've used diesel oil as the part of the cleaners, because diesel is a good lubricant and it's a good cleaner. But one of the things that we've noticed with all of the cleaners as of the last dozen or so years is, and Neutral was no different, the stuff that was made back in the 70s and 80s, I think, was a superior cleaner to what we've got now. They changed the formulation back in the 90s when TF solvents were outlawed by the governments because they contain ozone depleting chemicals. The manufacturers of cleaning chemicals for electronics had to reformulate their chemicals to get the TF and the CFC solvents and the HCFC solvents out of their products. and we saw a lot of crappy chemicals coming out. Neutral was one of the cleaners that did. MG Chemicals, which is the manufacturer of Neutral, was one of the companies that did reformulate their cleaner, and I think they've got it right. It's pretty stable. It doesn't affect plastics. You know, it is still a fairly good cleaner. I think it's probably one of the better ones that you're going to find on the market today. At least it's probably not quite as harmful as some of them. I mean, there are warnings on here. It says flammable. Yes, and it says it will explode. But yeah, Neutral cleaner for electronics with special lubricating oils. Well, the sniff test, my nose tells me what that is. Product of Canada. My nose tells me what that is. It's diesel fuel. It doesn't tell you here, but this is what it says here. You see, you know that this stuff's actually pretty good. Registered with Canadian Food Inspection Agency for use in food plants. It says avoid food contamination during use and storage, but do not use on food contact surfaces. But it says, and this product should be used by a responsible or recommended use by a responsible company representative. But that's saying right there that the contents in here aren't that harmful. You're obviously not going to ingest it, but they're not toxic. It smells like diesel fuel. So it's obviously a petroleum-based distillate of some type that they're using for their oils. But I take it it's not all that toxic. It's not like this stuff. When you see that on there, you know that stuff's bad for you. This is a really old can of degreaser, and I think I've lost my pressure on here now. Yeah, I've lost my pressure. There's still stuff in here, but not much left. But anyway, this was some of the good old stuff. This was the ozone environment conserving formulation. Yeah, okay. Well, this stuff was some of the stuff that was outlawed. You see, if you look on this one here, we don't have that poison. So the stuff's probably not that harmful. Even though it smells like diesel oil, it's probably not that harmful to you to get it on your hands, because it is not toxic according to the label, and it's safe for use in equipment used in food processing. So it's probably not that bad of stuff. Not like your regular oils and stuff. They've all got the skull and crossbones on it. And as I say, it's one of the better cleaners that I've come across over the years, and that's why I use it in my repairs, and many shops do. We'll just put the switch back in place. Get our good old 40% lead solder out, and solder this thing back in. And now we can work on lubricating the rest of the chassis. To lubricate the lower chassis here, we got to take out a couple of cut washers. So there's one here that we got to remove. That's one. And we also have to remove this little snap ring clip here. And again, the easiest way to take this off is just to pry it off with a screwdriver. Unless you have the tool to take it off, which I don't. Pry the little ring off there, and now this unit, if I'm not mistaken, this plate will lift out. If I just lift it, oh, there's a little clip over here. We're just going to release that with our thumbnail, like that, and now this unit will lift out of place. So we can clean this crud that gets around these gears and on these levers here. So again, we'll get our Q-tip out, and we'll just wipe the grease off of, this stuff gets very, very sticky. So we're just gonna wipe all the surfaces down here that have got this black grease on them. And we can even remove this slide plate here. We just have to take off this one spring to do so. So if I remove this one spring, like that, get that out of the way. Now we're able to remove this piece as well. Well, sort of. We can get it out of the way. It actually hooks in underneath the circuit board here, so we don't really need to take that out of the way though. We just need to get it or remove it enough so that we can clean the chassis underneath, just to make sure that pieces like this and we can take out this little lever, and we can take off this pendulum gear. We have to take another cut washer off to take that out. Lift that off. We can lift off that gear. One of the ones that gets gummed up is this is a gear here, this little clutch assembly. What it does is, as you can see, to switch it into fast forward and rewind from play, the mechanism, the cam mechanism pushes that down, and this will get gummed up. So we have to actually remove this little clutch assembly. There's a little clip that just pops it in place. So we just pop the clip out like that, and this piece can come out. Now we can remove this gear, and we can remove, I don't know if we can remove the pendulum or not without taking out the supply hubs, but we shouldn't have to do that. But we can get at the gear, or get at the post underneath here. This gets dirty, so we can lubricate that, and we just do that with a drop of oil. Good old, this stuff will work just fine, the 3-in-1 oil. We can just put a drop of oil down on there like that, so that it will get into the little bearing here, so that doesn't get stick. Because one of the problems that happens when it does get stuck is the spring can't push this back up. So we just lubricate the shaft in here. If it was gummed up completely, you'd actually have to take off this cut washer here and remove it, but in this case it hasn't gotten to that point, so I was able to just lube that up. I can take my Q-tip and remove the grease from the top side of the gear here. We're going to re-lube this with the yellow grease. So clean that off. And now we can set that back in place. It goes in under this gear here. So you kind of got to put it in at an angle so it fits underneath there like that. And then we've got our fingers that go on top, and they need to be cleaned off as well because they're going to have that black grease on them as well. So we just need to clean the fingers off, and we can put the fingers back on. This little, you see this little, I don't know if you can see it or not, you can zoom the camera in a bit here. This little clip has to go into this hole that's on here, so it fits over it like, it's this little clip that's stuck up here. That little clip there. That little clip there has to fit into this hole that's on the back here. That's what pulls it back into place. So when we're reinstalling that, we have to make sure that we get that onto that little pin, and then it'll drop into place. So that when it pulls back up, you see, that's what pulls this back into place, is that little clip there. So we want to make sure we get that on correctly. Now we need just to clean the slide gear, both sides of it. So we just wipe off the grease from the bottom here of this slide cam assembly. And the top side, wipe it down. And then we can put this gear, this cam assembly back into place. It drops into place like that. And that's what actually activates. You see that cam gear, or this cam plate, is actually what activates when that slides over. You'll see if I zoom the camera back out a bit. This is what changes the mode of the mechanism. As this moves back and forth, it releases brakes and it changes that mechanism from the play. And fast forward, rewind. Anyway, that changes that. We need to clean the bottom side of this plate. And this cam here, this lever. We need to clean that. And we need to clean the bottom side. Any of these surfaces that have got this black grease on it need to be cleaned off. What happens is this black grease dries up, causes these two pieces which need to slide independently, causes them to bind together, and then you end up with things like tapes getting eaten and other mechanical problems. So we just clean this all off. I'm not doing as good a job on this as I probably should, because this is just my machine and I'm using it for demonstration, but you get the idea. We clean off the grease here. We get our package of our Molykote grease, and we're going to put some of this stuff, I'm going to put some of this stuff on here, and we're just going to wipe this stuff onto here. On the surfaces that you don't need a lot of it either. It's relatively slippery. Probably any good quality grease will work. This is the stuff that Mitsubishi sold as part of their service kit. When you bought the service kit, this is what came with it. We can put our top gear back in place. It fits over top of this pin here, which we can probably put some grease on there too. Fits over top of that pin. Just lift that up and lift that out of the way, and then this little piece went right into here like that. That's what controls that. Okay, now we can put this thing back together. We'll put some grease. I forgot to put some grease on here too, so we'll just put a little bit of grease between the two. Actually, I put some on the bottom side of the other one, so that would have worked, but we'll just put some grease onto the top side here. Might as well use up what remains in this this little package, because I don't think I'm going to get much more out of it. Okay, we'll put our top cam assembly, main cam slide assembly back together. Once again, it just pops in underneath plastic clips here and back here. And now we can put our pulley back on. Put our cut washer back on here. And our other cut washer goes on over here. Well, somewhere. Goes on there. And our snap ring goes on over here. And our main spring goes on back to here. That's what pulls the mechanism back into place. And then our belt goes on like that. And now we should be able to test this machine and make sure it works. Turn it on, and I can actually loaded tape upside down, and it should go in. And there's what the mechanism does. You see, now it's threaded up the tape. If I put it into play, wherever the play button might be on this thing, play is right there. Goes into play mode, goes into stop mode, goes into rewind mode, stop mode, fast forward mode, play mode, reverse search mode, back to play mode, and eject. You'll see what happens here, how this disengages. The cam actually pulls this other gear out of the way, you see. This assembly, this gear assembly here is what controls the front loading mechanism to raise and lower the cassette. Once the cassette is in place, the main cam gear, which is underneath here, but it's underneath the circuit board. The main cam gear, which is turned by the loading motor that turns that tower gear on the top also turns the main cam gear below it. And that is what moves this lever back and forth. This lever is what changes the mechanism modes for the brakes and the back tension, and switches it between forward and reverse and play and full speed. It also disengages this little gear here. So when I press eject, cam gear goes over, engages that gear, which then in turn ejects the tape. If we look on the top side of this unit, we can see the bottom. Well, the cam gear actually meshes in with, there's a gear here that turns to tower gear. Basically the loading motor here, if I take the camera off the sticks, show you guys, the loading motor here, it turns through means of gear reduction. It turns this tower gear. This tower gear turns this other gear down here. This other gear, that's a midway gear, that turns the main cam gear, which is right underneath here. So that's the post for it. It mounts on the bottom side. If I pulled that circuit board out, you would see it. That cam gear is what operates that main cam, which is what moves that slide back and forth. You can see the bottom of the actually you can see it right here. If you look in here, you can see it. There's two of them. There's one there and there's one there. It operates the main cam. One of them operates a cam that runs the fan gear, which is what, here's the fan gear here. That's what pushes the guides into place and retracts the guides. And it's sitting in this cam gear. You can actually see the cam gear down here through here. And there's another one that is right below here, which is actually what this mode switch is attached to. Those are the two gears. This one main cam gear here is what operates this lever. This lever here, all it does, it has two levers. So that, well, this one has one lever and this one has a lever on it. It operates this lever back and forth, which moves the slide assembly. There's two levers to it. One moves the lower slide assembly, and the other one moves the upper slide assembly. The lower slide assembly goes right into a groove in the gear itself, which is why I couldn't take that lower assembly out without disassembling all of this and removing the circuit board. Which maybe you guys want to see that, maybe you don't. But to remove that circuit board, in addition to removing all of this, means I also have to take out the fan gear, and I have to take out these screws to do it. But there's not really much that goes wrong with those gears, because they're big gears. Yes, they've still got this black grease on them, but they aren't the small delicate parts that generally tend to jam up on these. The problems that these machines have is the lubricated surfaces between the top and the bottom slide assemblies are what stick. And when they get stuck, because they have to move in different directions, when they get stuck together, they can provide enough force to stop the cam gears from turning. and jam the mechanism. I don't think I've ever seen a situation on one of these machines where the cam gear has been broken. They are very reliable on these. But these pieces getting stuck, this teeter-totter gear getting stuck, that was a big problem. The bearing underneath here on the idler getting gummed up, that was a problem. The little lifter lever here that gets gummed up, that also is a known issue. You probably noticed something that I forgot to do on this, and that is I forgot to put some lubricant on those little fingers, which is something I'm going to do now, just because they actually make contact with that spinning gear while the tape is fast forwarding or rewinding, and without a lubricant on them, they're going to have a problem. They're going to fail. So we're going to just pop this gear off one more time. I don't have to take anything else off other than this. And I can now just put a little bit of this. I got a new package of Molykote grease. We're just going to put a little bit of Molykote grease right there where those fingers make contact with this gear, so that as it spins, they will become lubricated. Remember, guys, too much lubricant is worse than not enough. Not enough, you're going to have wear. Too much, it's going to get gummed up. It's going to attract all the dirt, and then you're going to have wear, and it's going to be gummed up. So there we go. Now we're back together for this unit, and this unit's now been totally serviced. We've done the lubrication on the upper side of the chassis. We've done the lubrication on the lower side of the chassis and cleaned the mode switch. And this unit is now ready to go back together and be in service for many more years. But I'm sure I will find something to do to this thing because this was a popular unit over the years. So we're going to base some more troubleshooting videos on this unit going forward. Show you guys how to troubleshoot one of the more common Mitsubishi VCRs sold. Till next time, we'll catch ya later. Bye.